Welcome to
The ALEJO Show.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of The ALEJO Show. Today, I'm so happy I get to talk to a native person, a person that I admire a lot. And she agreed to be on the show. She said she was a little bit nervous, but I don't think she's nervous anymore. BRIDGET FLYNN is with us in the house. BRIDGET, hello.
Hello, Alejo.
How are you?
I'm great, and you?
No nervous at all.
No, it's all gone.
All right. Thank you very much for being on the show. I wanted to have you in the show for so long, but you are so busy. You have so many things to do here in Colombia that was impossible to have you here before.
Thank you so much for having
That's
me.
the thing.
It's a pleasure and an honor.
Okay, the first thing I want to ask you is, and I keep asking this to all the people from States or England or whatever country they are, that they decided to stay in Colombia. Not because Colombia is bad or something like this, but it's just a curious thing that I have. I mean, you've been here for, what, 7 years?
7 years.
And why did you decide to come to Colombia in the first place?
Well, when I graduated from university, I had always wanted to live abroad. And I thought it's now or never, because if I get a job and start my career, I'm not going to leave.
Okay.
And so I had worked at the airport with a gentleman who was from Medellin.
Oh, really?
And an older gentleman, and he said, Bridget, I know you want to live abroad. You have to go to Medellin. It's the best.
Really?
And I said, okay.
At that point, did you know anything about Medellin? Did you know anything about... Colombia, the city.
Unfortunately, what I knew about Medellin was
the horrible things
that everybody outside of Colombia seems to know, the infamy.
Even though you decided to say, like, I'm not gonna care about that, I'm just gonna go.
I'm gonna go. There's danger everywhere, and every place has its positives and negatives. And
where were you living at that time?
I'm from New Jersey. I was in New Jersey.
Ah, you were in New Jersey.
Mm-hmm, yes.
Do you have New Jersey accent?
Well, I'm told no. I'm told that it's pretty neutral now, but I think that's because of just being an English teacher. I've toned it down.
Okay.
I watch that.
Okay.
I try not to sound like I'm from New Jersey.
When you came to Medellin, what was the first impression? Like, oh my God, this is it. This is the place I'm going to live. Or maybe it's like, oh, I'm just gonna try it for a couple of weeks, and then I'm gonna go to Cali, Bogota, or Rio de Janeiro, whatever other city you wanted to live.
No, Medellin is a paradise.
Really?
I knew. First glance, I thought,
that's
for
great.
me.
That's
this
great
is
to
for
listen
me,
to
yes.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and you got here, and what was the plan? Like, I'm going to be an English teacher. That will be the easiest thing because I know English, of course. I've been speaking English all my whole life. Or did you have any other plan?
Well, I studied to be an English teacher,
All right.
so I definitely wanted to do that. I had tried before I came to, I put out applications, put out feelers, and I didn't get too many responses. So I had to actually come here and put in the legwork.
Okay.
Go and knock on doors, as they say. And the idea was if I couldn't find work, then I had saved enough money to at least stay a year and study Spanish.
A year? You saved a bunch of money. All right. Okay, that's good.
Yes.
That's so American. So, was it easy to get a job here? I mean, once you were here in Medellin, was it easy to get a job?
I mean,
I bet it was.
The opportunities were there, yes.
Of course.
There were definitely opportunities, but that was 7 years ago. I feel now there's a little bit more competition.
Of course.
The word is out that Medellin is a beautiful place to be, to live, to work, and so...
Very handsome man.
Such handsome men, first of all, yes.
Okay. Okay.
So maybe it's not so much so today, but it wasn't necessarily easy. I feel like because I had the credentials at all, that doors, because I had the credentials as well, that doors had opened for me as well.
And I think that, in Latin America, we have a lot of English institutes. We are aware that we need to learn English. And whenever a person from America comes, that's a great opportunity for institutes to have like a person that speaks real language. But even though you also, not only were you an American, but also you studied to become a teacher, so that was also something very good. Okay, so you got your first job, your first class. Do you remember your first class? Were you scared? Like, okay, this is gonna be different because they they speak Spanish. Most of them were not gonna understand me. Was it difficult that first class?
Of course, I was very nervous internally. I didn't let that show.
Okay.
But I'm
the
sure.
poker face. You were like the poker face.
But inside just trembling because it was the context. It was
Okay.
the whole other context.
All right.
So that was a little worrisome, a little scary.
Do you remember what course
So
did you
it was a B2 level course.
Okay.
It was really nice because the students had been studying with each other for quite a while, so they were like a little family.
Okay.
And they just opened their arms and invited me to be a part of the family as
Wow.
well. So I feel really grateful for that
Fantastic.
experience.
So you've been teaching English for quite a long time, and you know the idea with you today is that I want you to tell me a little bit about your experience and how we can improve the listening and speaking skills. Because you know my subscribers are always eager to know strategies, and that's why they love this show, because teachers like you come here, they are like, okay, you should do this and this and that. But one of the things we were talking before was about the cultural thing, which I love. I think, and I don't know if you agree with me, but I think you can learn English in Colombia, Peru, Brazil, whatever. You can learn good English. Most of us did like that. But to really know the language, like idioms, phrasal verbs, slang, you really need to know the culture, because you read it, because you watch it on TV, or because you live in a foreign country. Do you agree? I mean,
Yes, absolutely. But that doesn't mean that you do have to leave the country.
Yeah, it's not an
to-
obligation. It's
No,
not a requirement.
because there's other ways to take get a sneak peek at that culture, and
Okay.
even through different materials or even through videos like yours, you do learn about those aspects, and
Okay.
and it's really looking at learning English as a holistic approach. So it's not that, okay, I'm going to work my pronunciation, I'm going to work on the grammar structures, but what are the differences here culturally that's going to help me actually be a better speaker, communicate better? I actually have a little anecdote about that. I was just at
I was going to ask you that, because what we're talking can be applied with you, with your
Exactly,
Spanish. When you
exactly.
came here, did you know Spanish at all?
No, so I basically knew some vocabulary.
Okay.
It wasn't Colombian
You would say like
vocabulary.
A1, A2 probably?
I would say A2.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So
but
you were not totally lost. I mean,
I
you
wasn't
knew.
lost, but to actually have a conversation, to
Okay.
actually speak, no.
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 All right.
No.
So you came here, and I mean, you have a lot of ideas and stories to tell us about what the culture impacted you. Like, for example, when you came here and you saw and you heard that Spanish that is quite different from the Spanish you got from the
Yes.
States. It was kind of a shock over there, I guess.
Yes, it was. What did I get myself into? I mean, that same feeling, like I thought I knew a little bit Spanish. Do I
right.
actually? Did I learn Spanish? So definitely a shock, and a little bit like, ooh, I don't know if I have to start at zero. Do I actually?
Do you remember
know?
in a specific point that you said like, oh, okay, this is a cultural thing, and that's why they say that this or that in Spanish?
I mean, I'm pretty observant. I think that's also part of, so I started to see those things, note those differences, and because I was fortunate enough to work at one point in the States with Latinos from all over.
Okay.
So, I mean, I got to see what we can say are general Latino qualities, and
Okay.
then the differences, like Puerto Ricans do this,
Oh,
and
yeah,
Dominicans
definitely.
do this,
Totally.
and you know, so I started to focus on that stuff to see how I could incorporate that in the way I speak Spanish, while not necessarily being a B2 yet.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, for example, silly things like when you go to say to ask a question. If I were in the mall and
Okay.
I needed to know where I was going, and I went up to a security guard, you know, just saying buenos dias
Okay.
or you know, good morning, it makes all the difference in the world. It said if I just went
Yeah.
up to him and said,
It
"Hi,
does.
I need to know where this is," and
Even without the hi,
Yeah.
you just say like, do you know where the
yeah.
pharmacy is?
while that's not necessarily rude in English, here it would be a
Here
little
it
bit
is.
more like, and buenos dias to you too, good morning to you too, and you're like,
So would you consider
yes.
that we are very kind of polite, I guess. I mean, we say hello. And the thing is that if I work with you, for example, I work on the 7th floor and you work on the 5th floor, and then we're running to each other the whole time, we will say hello every single time.
Yes.
Americans don't. And it doesn't mean that you are not polite. It's just that, and I remember because when I was living in America, I used to say like, hey again. And they were like,
and they look at you like,
yeah, we already said hello.
Okay. I mean, or do I know you? I mean, yes.
Do you remember in a specific sentence or idiom in Spanish that you were like, what? This is unbelievable. Because let me give you an example. Don't pull my leg. Let's talk about a student that is learning English. Somebody says, oh, come on, don't pull my leg. They immediately are going to translate that. Don't pull my leg. Well, what am I doing? Am I touching you?
Yeah, I'm not going to, exactly.
Exactly. Those kind of things are the ones that I'm saying, like, you really need to, go deep into the culture to understand those things. Do you have one of those in Spanish that you say like, wow, what do you guys say that?
I mean, off the top of my head, no. Let me think about it.
Okay,
I'll see what comes to mind.
If you remember one of those that we say, like, me cogió la tarde. That should be one. Me cogió la tarde. Like the afternoon grabbed me, and that's why I'm going to be late or to something.
Or me cae gordo. Or
me cae gordo.
Like
That's not nice to the fat community. Exactly, I know
that's
that.
That's a negative. I don't understand exactly.
But you know what? One of the teachers that were sitting right there on the chair, he told me something that he was like, wow, now I understand a lot of things. And that's why I love this show, because I keep learning a lot. And he told me that Americans see relationships like driving a car with the other person. And that's why if they are not going okay, they say, oh, we're on a bumpy road and we're going to break up, we're going to split up, these kind of things.
Yes.
So that's why, I mean, culture is important. But how do we get that? A student. Let's say that a student comes to you and says, Bridget, I've noticed that, I have to be a little bit more concerned about the culture of the country to understand a little bit more English. What would be your recommendation for those people? Watch more movies, read some more books?
It's not necessarily to watch more or read more, but it's to be more observant while you're doing that. So, for example, sometimes, we say, okay, so people from the United States are a little bit colder. Well, it's not necessarily that they're colder. It's just that their politeness or how they show affection is different than how you would do that here. So maybe it's not necessarily the big hug and kiss, hello, but
I know.
If I greet you and I say, hi, Alejo, that's I'm showing you affection. I'm excited to see you. So it's okay. How did that person, greet that other person in this movie? And was it formal or informal? And what's okay to say there or not? That language as well. It's also what's not spoken.
Okay.
So my hands, am I moving them? I'm excited to see you. Things like that. And those are also little cultural subtleties that you can pick up on and use in the language when you communicate, that get across meaning more than just this is the grammar structure, this is how you say that.
But you know what, nevertheless, many of my students will say, that's easy if you live in America, but what about here? I study in Lima, for example. I go to an institute and I have a great teacher. He's from Ohio, wherever. And then I go home and it's all about me. I mean, I just have to try to come up with ideas to understand those situations because that's not something I see every single day.
Right.
That's what I was telling you, that maybe, on the top of my head, the first thing is like movies and
for sure. Movies,
shows, whatever.
Series, yes. Even when you're reading or you're using, if you have some kind of material learning English, whether it's a worksheet you found online or something like that, and you're reading it, you need to also be observant of what you're reading, what's the situation happening here, going beyond, being critical of what is being said in the words, but also how they're being said, and when a writer or an author says, and then he shouted angrily, okay, why is he angry there?
Okay.
What's the happening there culturally? So it's going beyond, it's not just, okay, in the United States, they celebrate Halloween.
Okay.
It's beyond that. It's the little nuances of the language, those slight differences in expressions. For example, if I ask my students, do you guys have any questions?
Okay.
Okay, maybe some do, maybe some don't. But if I ask my students, hey guys, what questions do you have? That's something, it's like inviting you to have questions.
Okay. That's
like,
a very good thing.
Hey, I should have questions, maybe.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And she is kind of being nice about it. Not like I don't want to say rude, but not like the serious way of saying like, do you have any questions?
Do you have any questions?
Because in those cases, and you can see that, and I bet you do, because it's something that we as teachers developed, is the look of the students. When you say like, do you have any questions? And they look at you, but they don't say anything, but you can see a bunch of questions in their eyes.
It's written on their faces.
Yeah, it's
yes.
like but the other thing, Bridget, is that they maybe have a lot of questions, but they have still problems to enunciate the questions, to have the pronunciation of that. They don't want to get, laughs because of my English or something like that, which is something that I always keep telling my students. I mean, make mistakes.
Make mistakes.
That's one of the things you have to say.
For sure.
Okay, I watch a show that is called The Middle. I don't know if you have watched it before.
I've seen
The
it
Middle.
before.
It's kind of, I think it's in Indiana, something like that.
Somewhere, yeah.
And they talk about the English that is spoken in the middle of the country, because the other thing is that the United States, in this case, the United States of America, is so big that the English is kind of different every 20 kilometers. It's so complicated. You will say like, it's the same in Spanish.
Same in Spanish. Same here in Colombia.
But if you are in Bogota, Medellin, Armenia, I mean, kind of the center of the country, probably 70% of the country speak the same Spanish. Then if you go to La Guajira, then you will say like, these guys are a whole different thing. Because the other thing is that we watch a lot of New York shows, and that's another thing. I remember I learned English through Seinfeld, and I learned the basics of idioms and slang because of Seinfeld. But sometimes students, they don't know if that's proper English or not. I mean, that's supposed to be funny, so they use some
sarcasm,
difficult,
things like that.
And then I say the same things to in a real conversation, and then I can make a lot of mistakes and be judged about it.
Because there are so many possibilities to that, you just have to consider, okay, I need to narrate what I'm doing. I need to narrate what's happening here, and to necessarily not, and that's also part of the cultural aspect. We say like feeling out the room. So if I'm in a situation where I'm with my boss, I'm not going to say an expression that I'm not sure exactly and so I mean, it's more, I guess, erring on the side of caution in that case, but you also do have to make some of those mistakes to learn, and I think people are quite understanding if you're learning a language, that if you say something that might not be appropriate in that setting, that they could always mention that to you. But as far as having a different accent or saying a word that's a little bit different, for example, there's words here, and I went to Argentina and I had said a word that is not appropriate there, but we use it all the time here, and the girl she had no problem. She just kept going with it and knew that my Spanish was from somewhere else.
Did you find it? I mean, that was real that you went to Argentina,
That's
right?
That's a true story.
Okay. Did you find a lot of differences between the Spanish that is spoken there, the Spanish that is spoken here? Because, for example, they say, I need to talk to my vieja, and my vieja is my wife, but if I call my wife vieja here, that's going to be a problem. I mean, I might be sleeping
on the
couch for sure.
Yes.
Did you find a lot of differences? Because I mean, I will say you have a very beautiful Spanish, but you're still a student.
Thank
and
you.
we will be
You're
students.
being too kind. My Spanish.
No, your Spanish is very good. But I consider that even though I've taught and I love teaching, I'm still a student. I wasn't born in America. So did you find a lot of differences between both languages?
Absolutely. Even they, for example, say buen dia instead of buenos dias.
Okay.
And I never thought twice about that before. And then I thought, why are we saying buenos dias for many days when it's just
that
today,
day,
the singular?
You know what they do in Peru? It was very interesting because in Peru, I was in a meeting, like 20, 25 people, and everybody was like presenting themselves. And Peruvians, they will always say, buen día con todos. buen día con todos. Like I didn't get that.
Exactly.
I didn't ask.
No.
But it was like, okay, when
Okay.
when it came to my turn, I said like, buen día con todos. I'm from
Exactly,
Colombia and say this and this.
exactly.
Bridget, I'm gonna ask you some questions that most of the time students are asking me
Okay.
through the comments on my YouTube channel. One of the things is that what do I do to improve my pronunciation? That's one of the things. I want to sound like an American. I know vocabulary, I know the grammar structures, I can have a proper conversation, but I don't want to sound like a Latin person trying to speak English. What would be one of your recommendations?
Well, I think that the power is in that student's, own hand. You don't need to be in a classroom with a teacher telling you, no, it's pronounced this way, or repeat after me. So one of the best tools you have is to your cell phone. Just record yourself.
Okay.
Listen to yourself, play it back, and a lot of students don't realize they will be able to identify those mistakes. They will be able to say, "Oh, that didn't sound right."
Yeah,
I don't think that's
people might
it.
think
Yeah.
yeah, but it's gonna be me. I'm not a teacher, so I'm not gonna be able to recognize mistakes. But when you listen to yourself,
When you listen to
you're like,
yourself,
okay.
you notice many things.
it happens to me every time I watch this show, and I say like, "Oh, I said that. Stupid me. I have to be better all the time."
Or-
Okay, so that would be a
yeah.
good recommendation.
So
as well.
listen to it, and then that's where you can identify different. That word sounds funny. Maybe I don't know how to pronounce it 100% correctly, but you might notice like I don't think that's.
But then I
pronounced
can
that
go to
way.
Google and-
But then exactly, I can go back to whatever I'm watching or have somebody repeat it or the translators that's pronounce it for you. So that's an option.
Here's another question, and this is a major one.
Okay.
I understand, and it's gonna be funny talking about myself, but they say I understand Alejo. I've been following Alejo for so many years. I understand Alejo. I understand Pacho Ochoa. I understand all those teachers, Latin teachers that are trying to teach English. But then I talk to a native speaker, and then I have problems. And you know what? I couldn't agree more, because when I was learning, I'm still learning English, but when I was a student studying English, with my friends, I was just talking, and then I was talking to another person, and I felt intimidated, and I was feeling like I couldn't deliver the language I wanted to do. What would be that? I don't know if you have any ideas, but what would be a good recommendation to not be afraid of speaking in front of a native person?
I wish there was, a simple, this is how you fix that and
This is
organize
it.
that. But it really is, it does have a lot to do with time,
What do you mean time?
So the more you study,
Okay.
the more you keep practicing, the more you feel empowered and confident in your own speaking abilities.
All right.
The more you're going to feel at ease with that. So, for example, one time I was on the bus and an older lady had turned to me and asked me about the next stop.
Here.
And,
I mean,
yes,
you're talking
here
in Spanish.
in Spanish. And I froze, and I was like, I'm sorry, I didn't understand you. I don't know. And then I thought about it. I replayed what she said in my head,
And
I
you understood.
And I picked out the keyword and said, I know what she's asking.
But that was like 20 minutes after
No.
that. Okay.
No, it was after. And I turned to her and I said, no. The next stop is.
all right.
And she.
Didn't you feel great?
I
oh
felt
my
lovely.
God.
I felt lovely.
I master Spanish.
And then being sweet and paisa, she said, see, look, you understood me. Good for you. Like, that's just typical lovely paisa. And I felt like $1 million that day after that.
Let me make you a very stupid question that I just came up with. Do people recognize you instantly, like that this is not a person from Medellin? Because you have so beautiful eyes,
Thank
but
you.
those are more like Americanized more than here. But the rest of you, I mean, it doesn't look like, you're
Yeah,
not blonde.
Exactly.
Okay.
It depends. Sometimes when, for example, if I'm in a taxi, a lot of the times, and this is how I know that my Spanish has gotten better. So the taxi driver say, "You're not from here," and I think to myself like, "Okay, yes, obviously, sir. I mean,
Okay.
But then
But
they'll say,
if he says that, would you say like my Spanish is not good or my Spanish is getting good?
Well, here's the reason why. But they'll ask, but where are you from? And I think to myself, if he can't pinpoint me as somebody from the United States right away, maybe my Spanish doesn't have that gringo accent lingering.
All right. So you will be from England or any other country,
or maybe even I've gotten Puerto Rico, things like that. One time France, and I thought, yes, because that's a Romance language, you have to have that little bit. So I was very excited about that. I thought, yes, my accent is getting better.
Because recently I was in Canada, and as you can see on my hat, I was wearing my Canada hat today, and I was talking to somebody, and I said, well, yeah, I'm from Colombia, and he said, are you? I thought you were from Denver or something like that. I felt like, oh my God, let me give you money. Let me give you money.
Let me shake your hand. Sir.
Yeah, oh my God, let me give you a hug. I felt so good, but all the times they're like, you're not from around. And it's not like I feel bad, but I feel like I still have a lot to work.
Yeah. There's moments where it makes you feel good, and like if they say, but you're Spanish, you're doing very well, and I think yes, and then there's moments where I think, wow, 7 years and I still haven't gotten this down yet, like living in this country and I still haven't been able to master that.
But you know what? I'm gonna say something that it's not only you, it's all people from America, and is that you are so patient, and if you listen to somebody making mistakes, you'll be totally okay with it. Maybe it's because you're so close to Mexico, you've lived that experience as Americans, and that's one of the things that I wanted to tell my students. And don't be afraid to talk to a native person, especially he or she's from America, because they will immediately understand. They will be so kind, even though you make mistakes. If you say she don't, they will totally know, okay, that's not okay. But some of us also say she don't, like in songs and stuff like that.
Yes. No, and if the message comes across clear, there's no problem. You're communicating, and I know, of course, you want to say she doesn't, but you'll get there. You will get there, and the way you'll do that is by going out there and talking and interacting. And I don't mean necessarily going out there. It could be virtually. It could be, through any kind of method. But it's making those mistakes along the way. But you do see that people appreciate that this person is learning the language, and I understand what you're trying to say.
One of the nightmares we all have is listening skills. I'm talking to a person, that person is talking to me, and I understand, but out of the blue, that person starts talking about a certain topic with certain words that I have no idea. And sometimes it feels awkward, stop and say like, whoa, what was that? Because I want to have a fluid conversation. What would be your recommendation for those who are thinking, I need to work on my listening. My listening skills are not, because if you take a look at the students, they will say like, I can read, I can write, and I'm beginning to be able to communicate, but listening, I can understand everybody. I can understand songs, films, music, whatever. What would be your recommendation in that matter?
It's actually, and it seems counterintuitive, but one of the things you could do is narrate out loud what you're doing. So if I say, okay, I'm brushing my teeth right now, I am in the language, and what happens is your brain starts to make those translations of your thoughts and your ideas in a manner that allows you to do it with more, to be quicker at it. And so when you're listening now, it's not your brain trying to figure out those translations or what you just said. Exactly. It's, since you've been doing that practice, your brain is already, getting accustomed to that, and that switch automatically goes off while you're listening.
I love that, because you're talking about something that is also one of the biggest concerns, and is that translating. When you say, hello, how are you? You don't need to translate that, because your brain immediately goes like, oh yeah, fine, thank you. How about you? But if they ask you, what have you been doing lately? Then you say like, what have es tener, so that the mix kind of things goes there. But that would be a very good recommendation. I mean, start doing by yourself, talking to yourself, and then your brain will immediately switch and try to get that word.
Another idea, and this is more so if you're actually talking with somebody. So I mean, if you're listening to watching a movie or listening to music, you won't necessarily be able to put this into play. But instead of, like you said, saying, stop, I'm confused, I'm lost, it's more confirming what you heard. So, wait, so let me get this straight. That's what we say. Let me get this straight. So, he went to the store and he forgot to buy the eggs.
Okay.
You know?
Trying to paraphrase what you just said to make sure I understood.
And,
that would be great.
And then the other person could take social cues from that, either like, oh, I might need to slow down here, or
that's a great
this
recommendation.
person has no idea what
Wow.
I'm talking about. And it's a way where you're not necessarily embarrassed, but you're also kind of practicing, and that other person sees
That's
that.
a great recommendation, because it feels awkward to stop and say like, whoa, what was that? But if you say like, okay, so let me understand that. So what you're saying is this, and that. And then the person will say like yes or not,
no,
whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay. Bridget, you know what? We as students, we always tend to be concerned about little things that we think are big things, but they are not. For example, people say like, teacher, I have a big problem. What's the difference between say and tell? And I say, don't worry about those little things.
Yeah.
You'll get there. I mean, do you get that from your students as well?
Of course. And me myself.
Speak and talk.
Yes.
What is the difference between those? Come on. I mean, it's okay.
Come on. Yeah. No, the idea is you want to express yourself so you're understood. And if that right now means I say speak when it should be tell, I'm going to, but if you know that that's something that you need to work on or you're not sure, investigate. Do a little investigation. Have that in your mind. Okay, for the next 2 months, that's what I'm going to focus on, making sure that I use speak and tell correctly whenever I have the opportunity.
But in order to do that, I have to be aware of my mistakes. Like I have to make a list, like these are the things that are concerning me about my language, and I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah, that's another thing, that recording yourself and playing it back. So say, okay, for 45 seconds, I'm going to talk about food.
Okay.
You give yourself a little topic, and then once you play it back, you will start to identify different, I didn't conjugate that right. Maybe you don't know how to conjugate that right, and maybe you'll need help in that area. So, I've got to go watch my video with Alejo's video to figure out how do I correct that here. But you'll start to realize what are your patterns that you make, your mistake patterns or error patterns.
And if you have a bunch of questions, that is one of the biggest gifts you can give to your teacher. Because when you're a teacher and they say, guys, do you have any questions? And there's silence, you'll be like, okay, so let's move on, even though we're not going to be able to move on. Yeah. But when there's one student says, yes, I have like a bunch of questions over here. How do you say this, and that? That is a fantastic gift.
It's great.
Like,
it's
great. Okay,
yeah.
You're going to be great. Okay, last question. Many people all the time are asking me like, I tried to be better, and I've been studying English for 2 years, and I still feel like I'm an amateur. I cannot get my message across. And I always say, like, you should check what you're doing. I mean, what type of methodology you're taking, these kind of things. But let's try to make it like general.
Okay.
If somebody's been around studying English for a year and a half, and they feel like, I don't feel like I'm able to communicate so well, what would be your recommendation to those people?
Well, of course, I mean, you have to keep in mind, learning a language is a process that's a lifetime. It's a lifetime. Even being here 7 years now, my Spanish is nowhere near where I think it should be, but that's 6 days a week. I'm teaching classes, I'm interacting in English. Of course, outside of the class, I want to help my students. I'm speaking more English rather than Spanish. So if that's your goal and that's your drive, you have to also start looking at these other factors. Okay, maybe with grammar, I feel stuck, but let me start looking at holistically. Let me look at the culture. Let me look at things that will help me to be a better communicator. And those are all the little puzzle pieces that will maybe help you to be clearer in your speaking. So, okay, you still say she don't, but because you know to say con permiso when you enter the room, and that's the polite thing, people are going to respond to that in a way like, oh, this person knows what they're doing. This person, wow, their level's quite high, and you're like an A1 still, like, oh, you know what I mean?
You're like, oh my God, this is great. I'm improving.
Exactly.
Let me go, before we finish, let me go to the other side of the coin. In Spanish, what is the most difficult thing that you've been in front of when you're talking about Spanish? Like grammar, vocabulary, any particular topic that you will say like, oh, I don't master this in Spanish?
The subjunctive and I are
Okay.
not friends. We are not friends.
Really?
And it's a struggle for me daily. There's times where I know that the subjunctive should be used here, and I don't even try.
You try to.
It is
I
what
don't
it.
even
I'm gonna
try.
use present
I'm
tense
just
here.
lazy, and I'm just going.
I can't.
Okay.
I can't do it. So that's my battles all the time.
Do you have any word in Spanish that you cannot pronounce well? Like wow.
Believe it or not, it's
Like for example, in my case, vulnerability. That was a struggle
that's a
one.
tough one, yeah.
The vulnerability.
It's those words that have the diphthongos, the triptongos, those vowels. So Pereira. I can't even.
The city, Pereira?
Yeah, trying to say things like that where there's a couple vowels or a couple vowels.
But that's
in
so
there.
great because my students are gonna watch this video and say Pereira. She has problems pronouncing Pereira. That's the same case with me. I cannot pronounce, I don't know, whatever word it is, and it's the same thing. I will get there.
Yeah, it's a language learner. You're going to have that as a language learner.
Okay.
And I have all the same tricks and tips and strategies that I share with my students and help them. And look, I'm still struggling in different areas to learn the language. So
Just go after me, Pereira.
Pereira.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, you got it.
I think that second R disappeared somewhere in there.
That's because you
Thank
have problems with the R.
Yes,
That's
thank you.
Bridget, thank you very much. I cannot even find the words to thank you enough for being so kind of being here and giving those fantastic clues for all of us. And you've seen also on Bridget's Instagram account over there. I was thinking about something else. Instagram account, you can follow her. And Bridget, thank you very much. I hope this is not the last time you come here.
No, thank
because
you.
we have a lot to
I would
talk.
I love to be back. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
And you have so beautiful eyes.
Thank you so much.
All right. guys, thank you very much for being here on the ALEJO Show. Remember to subscribe and leave the comments if you have any other questions. I will be responsible and give it to Bridget and she will answer it back. All right? So see you later, my friends.
Welcome to the ALEJO Show.